Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 98 of the North Meet South web podcast.
98. Oh man, only 2 away from 100. This is exciting.
So close, so
We're
close.
gonna hit 100. Michael, do you remember when we first started this show?
I do. My lovely wife tagged you and I. You probably haven't seen this because you don't go on Facebook much, but
I
she
haven't.
tagged us in a post from June 13th, 2000 and when was it? 13, I think.
Oh man.
I think that's when it was. Was it that long
way.
ago? No, 2016. It must have been 2016.
I was gonna say it couldn't be 13. There's no way it's 2013. But 16 sounds more reasonable. 5 years. Yeah, that sounds more like it.
Yeah, so
5 years.
Back then, what did she say? She said, my man's internet fame is on the rise. A podcast, fancy. I didn't understand most of it, but it sounded legit. I snagged me a clever one. Hopefully he remembers me when he wins the internet version of an Oscar.
Nice.
So we've got this
Nice.
is episode 98 of this podcast. We've done I think we've done have we done 100? We've done 100 of the Laravel News podcast as well.
Yeah.
Still
I think so.
no internet Oscar forthcoming, however.
Nope.
So,
No.
One
But
day.
we do have a special guest on today, which is awesome. So with us today, we have the infamous and often invisible Ninja Parade. I'm going to let him reveal his real name for us. For all of you who know Ninja Parade on the interwebs but don't yet know his actual name, introducing Mr. Go ahead.
My name is Yaz Jalad.
Yes! Yeah, and if you've ever been to Laracon, you've probably met Yaz. He's usually the dude running around with a camera and taking awesome photographs that we all get to enjoy post-conference. Last time we were in, let's see, I guess it was in New York. Last time we were hanging out, right? Yeah, and I remember I got to go hang out with Yaz and go get some drinks up on a rooftop. It was really fun. We had a great time. So that was pretty cool. So Yaz is a longtime Laravel community member. He's been hanging around and just being all sorts of ridiculous and entertaining for the last at least 5 years. And like one of the funniest things that we see is Eric. I don't know if Eric first started it or who started it, Yaz, or if it was you that started it. But it'll be people with like their arm out like at Laracon or something, and then taking a picture and then like tag you, and it's like, I took a picture with Ninja Parade, whatever. So funny.
My claim to fame is that I even got like Taylor and Abigail to do it.
Yeah.
Like that. Like Taylor looked incredibly awkward, but he did it.
Yeah, that's funny. So, we've known you, Yaz, for quite some time, and I think this is maybe the second time we've had you on the show. I think one other time we kind of like had you jump on just in the middle of something to talk about. I don't even remember what it was.
Multi-tenancy.
Oh yeah,
keeping the account ID table thing. Yeah.
That was it. So hey, thanks for gracing us with your presence on the show today. It was a little bit of a last minute thing. I was kind of worried actually. Usually Michael and I are messaging back and forth a little bit before our time, and I'm just like, hey, are we good for tonight? Like 10 o'clock or, and Michael's almost always like, yeah, or sometimes it's like, dang it, like it's Father's Day in Australia a day early. We've got something, that happens sometimes. I forget about that stuff. So that does happen on occasion. So we was like 5 minutes, maybe it was 10 minutes till. And I'm like, Yaz, I haven't heard from Michael yet. I don't know if this is happening. And so I was glad to hear that Michael was like, no, I'm always available for our regular recording time, which is not always true.
Not always true.
You were trying
most of the time. Most of the time.
Who was it? Christoph Rumpel was on Twitter, and he said, do you schedule your YouTube streams? And you were like, no. And I said, it would maybe help us stay more regular. And you're like, we haven't changed our recording schedule for the last 5 years. I'm like, yeah, true. We haven't changed the scheduled time, but it seems to jump around a little bit now that you've got 2 kids of your own, So
it's a disaster.
Anyway.
And the Blob Cafe art.
Ooh, what's this? What's the Blob Cafe art? I don't know what this is. Help me out.
My tweets, when anytime I attempt to make latte art, it usually just comes out as a blob. Because I'm trying to get my breakfast ready and Ree's morning tea and Eli's breakfast ready. So I'm like trying to do all these things whilst with one hand holding the milk in the frother. And you can't just put it there and hope for the best. You've got to nurse it. You've got to wiggle it up and down. You've got to make sure it's in the right spot. Otherwise, you end up with all of this just like milk foam at the top. And when you're making latte, you don't want milk foam. You want textured milk. The air's got to be all the way through the milk. Otherwise, it just comes out. And it doesn't matter because I just put a lid. If I've got my travel mug, I just put the lid on it so I don't have to look at the disappointment.
Give it a good shake. Yeah, give it a good shake. You're all set.
I mean, it always tastes good. It just doesn't look pretty. I'm not cut out to be a barista.
Yeah, no, I think
it kind of looked like, I don't know if you guys remember Barba Papa. Do you guys ever know that show?
No.
I've heard
blobs
of it.
that can transform. That's what it looked like. I'm dating myself.
Yeah, the last one I thought looked like a little sea turtle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, hey Yaz, we actually wanted to have you on the show because you've recently made a little bit of a change in career path, I suppose. And we actually were talking a little bit before the show because you always decide to give me crap about Wilbur Powery, which I'm gonna have Wilbur actually surprise guest. Wilbur's jumping on tonight as well. No, just kidding. But Wilbur Powery was employed at Wilbur, oddly enough, right? That's where I work as Wilbur for the last 2 years or so. And then Michael made the comment. Well, Michael, what did you say? You were just talking about it, and you said,
"Yeah, I said,
what?
I said, Yaz stole your employee to go and work at his company, and then he chuffed off, and he's left now."
Yeah, that's right. And so, Yaz, do you remember that conversation? As soon as so actually, it was so funny because Wilbur texted me like out of the blue and was like, "Hey, dude, you got a couple minutes to chat this morning?" And I'm like, "This is not good. This is not good." And I remember I had just seen Yaz post on Twitter like the previous week. Like, hey, we're hiring, come work with us. And so Wilbur, when he got on the phone, here's what I said, exact words. I said, if you're going to work with Yaz, I'm going to puke. And he said, I'm going to work with Yaz. I called it. I actually called it. It was so funny. And
the funny thing is,
yeah, go ahead.
He never told me that he was applying. I didn't know anything about it until there was like a screening interview and it was him.
Yeah,
like that was
I messaged you like immediately. I was like, yes. I was like, you took Wilbur, and you were like, whoa, dude. I had no part in this. He was like, very like, no, that is not what happened. I was like, no, it's good. But Yaz wanted to be very clear. He's like, I did not bring him on. I wasn't like headhunting him. Like, no. So Anyway, it's good. We're all good. So hopefully, if you had any lingering doubts about our friendship, this smooths it all over. You're on the show, and by my request. So here you are. We're good now. We're good.
Awesome.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about actually, Yaz, I'm interested in hearing about sort of your career path. Honestly, just kind of like where you've come from, and like I know you've got like a SaaS product in there as well, and just kind of like how it's led you to where you are now, and kind of like going out freelance on your own. And, what are the things that helped you come to that decision, and what's the future look like for you? So jump in anywhere you want there, but I'd just be interested in hear the story you got.
Yeah. I don't think I want to go too far back, but I did, after about 3 years at my first like development role, where I was doing Flash, I quit and like I started doing contract work. And it was around the time that I was planning on actually going to Costa Rica and getting married. And we were planning on having like a month-long honeymoon. And month-long honeymoons don't really work when you have a job. You don't really have a month of holidays. So basically I just like lined up like 3 contracts, did those, and just kind of like left and got married and came back expecting to look for another job because I just kind of got burnt out at the one that I was at. And yeah, from there I just kind of fell backwards into just freelancing and just kind of like doing my own thing. And it got to the point where it became like a very steady stream of contract work. And, like I was, basically like newly married, no kids, just my dog. And yeah, it was awesome. But when I had my first kid, the contracting stuff got a lot more kind of stressful in that
for
I
sure.
I had a couple of contracts that, were people that I didn't really know. Whereas before it was always like word of mouth and kind of like, kind of referrals and that kind of stuff. But these people, like I had one company that, I don't know if you guys know Meetyaz, the guy that does like the magic testing. So I met him doing contract work for this company called Blue Jay. And it was this guy that was like pulling people off of the Laravel IRC at the time. And so I did that, and like they owed me like $11,000, and like they just kind of like, and they're like in the States in Texas, and it was this really shady company, and they're like they just screwed off. And I never got paid for that. And I just got to the point where I was like, kind of like, yeah, like just too much of that. And I kind of had this feeling that like I needed to work with a team because I thought I wasn't really like learning. And because, when you're building products on your own, you kind of just get them done. But yeah, so long story short, started, I sent out a tweet that my good friend Adam Wathen retweeted, and then Jonathan Rennick saw it, and Jonathan Rennick got that tweet to my now really, really good friend Adam Campbell, who I've kind of built a bunch of products with, and I'm building a product with right now. And yeah, so that's where I got my job at Spur. So that was like my first kind of like job, but like it's always been a contractor because they're an American company. I'm Canadian, not legally able to work. So I've always technically been self-employed, but it's been like kind of like a full-time contractor role. So, but that one was like the first time I was on a team where I was like, there was more than just me building stuff. Yeah, so did that, and like they went VC, and I just got kind of to the point where I just needed a change, and then that's when I switched over and joined Ario for about 10 months. So, but yeah, so in that process, I guess for me, like I've always been kind of my own boss, and I've always had my own kind of schedule and that kind of stuff, and my own business on the side. So it's been nothing really changed except for the fact that now I just don't have like a full-time like contract salary kind of coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so what was your role? Is it Ario? Is that how you say it? Ario?
I think so. Yeah. That's how I said it. I know that
no one ever corrected
like,
you if
even,
it was wrong.
even like, yeah, like even Brannick, like their customers say it different. Like they say Ario, they say Ario. But like Ario is the way that I pronounce it. And I remember them pronouncing it that way as well. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your role there? What was like your job title? What were you sort of responsible for?
Well, I was actually their first full-time developer hire. Andres was working there as a contractor on a part-time basis already. And I believe Jason Beggs was a contractor there for, I'm not sure how long. I remember seeing his commits kind of spanning around 3 to 5 months.
Doing that sweet Livewire.
Yeah. So he built that V2 version for them with them. And then I was like their first hire for like an employee kind of thing. And my role was meant to be kind of like, just like, come in and be like the senior, kind of like help just, direct some stuff. Cause like, I think that I brought a lot of that. I just kind of like fell into that role at Spur because of the team size at the time. After Jonathan Rennick left, it was me and my CTO, Adam, and this guy, Tony, who's in the UK. And I just ended up kind of being in the position where I straddled kind of like almost all the products in the company. And I ended up being like, because of my being remote and everybody else being in the office, I ended up putting myself in a position where I was the one that was deploying the API, because it made me kind of like understand everything that was moving around in the company, because it made me talk to all other departments and all the other developers and kind of like kept me in sync of what was going on. So I brought a lot of that stuff, and that's a lot of the stuff that they wanted me to bring. So yeah, like when I joined, like, I helped them properly deploy their app through Heroku and like build their assets on the server and set up that stuff. Just, I know you guys are big fans of like whip, like with commit history, but like kind of standardize some of that stuff so that, you have a little bit more of a consistent, commit history. So you know what's going on and how they related to tickets that were being done, always having like a development branch or that was ready for production no matter when.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things like that. Like they didn't, they weren't really a team yet. They were just kind of like building a product. So I did a lot of that stuff, and it was really, really good. Moved the needle like pretty far for them. Got things kind of like automated and, doing really well. Helped screen and, hire a few developers as well, which was kind of cool. Done that at a few places now. So it's fun.
Yeah, because you've got some reach as well, right? So that's the good news. Like for them, it's like, and I've been able to help with a couple little things like that with a company that I help do some work for. It's just like a lot of times it's who you know, right? It's not even necessarily all the work that you can get done. It's the people that can get the work done, or the people who have the answers to questions that people are asking, right? Like it was just recently somebody was talking about, I think it was Jesse Shutt from what was it? Be Nice, Do Good. What's her name?
Zingler.
Those people. Zango. Thank you. And so,
Zango.
Zango. And so he was asking a question, and it was basically about, I need to map over a collection and get the previous and next items as well. And I was like, Joseph Silver, that's the guy. Go talk to him. He'll tell you. And it was like, boom, he knew, right? So a lot of it is just having been around long enough to know the people who have the answers to the questions that you need to know. And that knowledge is super valuable, especially when you're walking into a company like that, as well as like, it sounds like you're sort of being working with a team that's sort of matured over a period of time from that like a rapid application development, just everything is prototype, to now like a more mature sort of stable, you've got, actual meaningful commit messages, like you said, like that dev branch sort of that Git branching strategy, which we did that for a while. And then we collapsed it back just down to a main branch. But anyway, all those things that you brought to the table, that's really cool. So it sounds like you left them in a really good spot, actually. So before you kind of hopped out, it's like you accomplished a lot of really great stuff for them, got them some really great employees, and now you're sort of stepping back out on your own again, back into the freelance world.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I did it. I guess it's a bit of a secret, but I did also think about leaving around 3 months into the position. Like, I'd been kind of going through a lot of stuff that made me kind of unsure if I wanted to continue working, like devoting all of my, conscious hours to this, because, as you both have kids and have a real job, like, that your kind of creative hours are very limited, right?
Yeah,
because
sure.
you have your children, you're tired, like I've always been trying to build like these other things. And like, I like having opportunities to kind of explore new technologies and try and build my own stuff. It just became a lot harder to do that because all my like 9 to 5 hours were devoted to somebody else's product. And, like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I want to be doing something else. So I had this like push-pull thing going on there. Like, I can't say enough about like the guys that own the company, like Brannick and Brendan and Matt were, they're incredible human beings. Like, they're very thoughtful and considerate. And like, I was able to talk to them about pretty much anything. But it started to come at odds with kind of like where I was at my life and what I wanted to do. And like the idea of being on a team was the reason why I wanted to join Spur, like 5.5, 6 years ago. And being on a team right now is like the reason why I don't want to be at that company now. Like, it's kind of like I've come full circle. I don't know if that kind of makes sense to anybody, but it's kind of how I felt.
So let's maybe we can talk about some of the products you're working on or have worked on. I mean, I'm sure if you're talking about one that you're sort of thinking about launching, that's probably still sort of undercover a little bit. But I know you've launched previously pretty successfully ContestKit, right? How's that going? What are things looking like for that? Do you have other people that you're working on with that or on that? Or so what's the story with ContestKit?
So ContestKit right now is just kind of like sitting as is. Like, I haven't really touched or done a ton of it. I've used it myself quite a bit. I keep using it myself. Pretty much the reason why I built it was that's kind of like the stuff that I want to be able to. I envisioned being able to be like, I want to run a Twitter contest. I want to be able to not think about it again and not like only be able to have 100 eligible winners, like the way that the Twitter API kind of limits stuff. So that's why I built that. But right now, like I'm talking to, I don't know if you guys have like the W8, like the Canadian Hockey League. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's like it's like the league that all the people that get drafted to the NHL are playing in right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Gotcha.
Like they'll be like a European. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm talking so in the CHL, there's like a Western Hockey League. So I'm talking to them about doing like an activation for one of their sponsors. And they want to use ContestKit for it. So I think ContestKit's going to end up pivoting back to what it was before, like the scratch and win API kind of like headless type product. But yeah, so doing that. I'm working on another thing with Adam right now, which is, like, it's not really a secret. It's kind of like an e-commerce product. It's going to blow a lot of people's minds, I think, when they see it. It's incredible. Like some of the stuff that he's been doing in there has been just kind of like insane. So it's definitely going to be a game changer for people that want to start selling, things on their website without having to put up a storefront. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's always the worst part. Every time I've been in a company or engaged with someone that has done this, where rather than using something off the shelf, they've gone and tried to build their own thing. There's always, you build for your very specific use case, but once you throw customers at it, you start realizing you're missing X and Y, and um, without having a platform there that's kind of dealing with that for you and accounting for all those things, it's the whole not invented here syndrome. And I've seen, not just e-commerce, I've seen it in a number of businesses over the years for a number of different products and reasons. And it's just, it kind of gets tiresome, but it's also a bit of fun to kind of untangle it and wind people back to just doing sensible things so they can focus on their own business.
Like the reason why it kind of came about was, one was Justin Jackson way back when COVID started. I remember him being like this really active, like Samaritan, running around trying to like help all these small companies and businesses in his small town get online and run and start stores. And he was just like blown away. Like he's technically savvy. He was blown away by how difficult it was. And then when Ian Landsman, who runs the Laracon Online and was doing the Laracon US online version, got all those amazing graphics done by Conseco and all those people. I don't know. I forget the guy's name that was doing all those avatars. Yeah. And like they have a store, right? Like, because the Laracon Online website is a store. It sells tickets, and he just wanted to sell like these T-shirts and posters and all that other stuff. And again, Ian Landsman is a developer. Like, he is technical. Like, he doesn't do it every day, day in, day out, but he is a developer. And I remember messaging him on Telegram, asking him about it, because we were going to coordinate and I was going to do like this giveaway to like launch the store. And he had to postpone it a week and he sent me a block of text, like a wall, just all the things that he just hit trying to set it up with, like, Shopify and Printful and connecting this and doing that. And like, it shouldn't be that hard, right? Like, it's 2021. You can one-click deploy a server with Forge. Right. You can one-click deploy a Lambda with Vapor. You can't do that with, any sort of store functionality right now. So it's nuts.
And so that's sort of what the product is that you guys are working on, is something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, without kind of getting into details, think Spark, but for e-commerce. So like, you can just drop in Spark. Absolutely, and you have subscription based. This is going to basically allow you just to drop in your provider for where you want to get your products. So my focus right now is trying to get Printful to work, because Taylor uses Printful, Justin Jackson uses Printful. I know a lot of people that use it, and they all have to have a storefront in front of it. So Justin's got like some crappy WordPress thing. Taylor's got a big cartel. So everything has some storefront in front of it, but like, they all have websites, right? They all have like a Laravel or Statamic app running. So to be able just to pull in a package, just sync all that stuff up, and then be able to have like a kind of a, e-commerce experience on your site that kicks out to a Stripe checkout, kind of feels like just a natural way of, going, rather than having to get up like a, big cartel, and like Taylor's selling on like, bigcartel.laravel.com or whatever it is. Like, it's always some meetup like subdomain and stuff. So
that sounds pretty awesome. So that makes up a portion of your time, right? And then sort of, since that's in pre-launch, is the rest of your time just being made up of freelance gigs, freelance projects, things like that?
Yep. Right now I'm working on.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm working on a couple of things. Yeah.
So I would imagine that maybe 5-6 years ago, before, when you were working on things on your own, and you were, you had said a lot of it was word of mouth, but then it sort of got to the point where you were just working with some other folks you hadn't worked with before. I mean, the scale and the speed at which Laravel has grown during the last 5 and 6 years means the amount of demand that there is for Laravel is just insane right now, right? And I feel like there's a lot of people making this jump, which is part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you actually about this. Is there are a lot of people right now making a lot of money just doing freelance Laravel stuff, because there's so many people that need it. I just put up I'll just give you some context here. our company has been hiring, and it seems like everybody in the US, I don't know if everybody's experiencing this, but it's like the massive labor shortage right now. And nobody's applying to anything. So we put up job postings that previously would have gotten us, I don't know, like 300 candidates in a week, right? And we're getting like 70, maybe, right? So cut it in like a third. Now contrast that with, I put up a posting on Larajobs, and within 2 hours, I had 70 applicants. 70. Like it's insane how many people know about Laravel and are wanting to work on Laravel related stuff. But the demand is just crazy. So I would assume, or I would hope, that maybe that's some of like where you're at too, is like you feel like maybe a little more comfortable sort of jumping out there. I mean, obviously with a kid and things like that, there is some probably stability that you're like, I really need to be able to make sure that I don't get, stuck out like to dry on $11,000 again. But is that a worry for you? Is like the demand for Laravel part of what helped you feel comfortable enough to kind of get back out there? Or is it just like the networking you've been able to do over the last 5-6 years? What is it that sort of helped you change your mind to be able to go back to that world and feeling confident about putting yourself out there like that again?
I think first and foremost is the connections that I've made with the people that I know now. Like it's kind of like, it's actually crazy to think about going back 6 years or 6 or 7 years. I forget when that first Laracon was, when I went to that first Laracon to where I am now in terms of ability, what I can do, what I could build, and the amount of people that I know in the community, right? Like the Laravel community that we're in is massive. Like I know people and talk to people on a daily basis from around the world that are all in the Laravel community. And the reach from like, I felt so humbled when I put that tweet out, and it was getting retweets by like all these people. And like, it ended up getting like, I ended up getting inundated by messages and, emails and stuff like that. It was just, like I would not have ever expected to be able to get that amount of traction, back then, because before it was all word of mouth. I was very like on my own, isolated. Like I just started using Laravel, like within a year or whatever. So very different table stakes, right? Like now, like I know a lot more people. There's a lot more opportunities. I feel more confident going after a big project, whereas before I would probably be a little bit more hesitant. And there's also a little bit of a network of like freelancers out there that, if you can land like a really big project, there are people out there that you can work with.
Right.
Whereas before I was like, I felt like if it wasn't me doing it, I wasn't gonna be able to get it done.
Yeah, that is tough. I mean, like that's a really good point, how the idea of taking on a huge project is really intimidating, because how those things tend to grow out of control, especially the longer they take, the more features the customer wants, right? You got to be, so I'm sure that's come with an education as well, just like the ability to be able to scope projects accurately and say like, hey, this is where the line is in the sand, like this is how much we're doing, this is what we've agreed to. But then also, like you said, if you do get overwhelmed, you have people you can draw on to kind of pull in and help you out. Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm with you on that. Like I've had a couple people ask me, and specifically like what this one other company I work with, for like to help with these big projects, and having a full-time job, it's very difficult to like commit to that.
Yeah, the extra income that you can generate from doing that kind of stuff sounds great until you factor in, especially you, Jake, with 4 kids. But factoring in the fact that it means you're working 9 to 5, coming home, spending a couple of hours with your family until they go to bed, and then going and continuing to work. And depending on the project, if it gets done, and you spend 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or whatever out of hours, but that's it's still 4 to 6 weeks where you're grinding away, and an extra 20 hours a week on top of your day job. It's just a really easy way to burn out. And at the end of it, you kind of think, is the extra money worth it? And at the moment, because my kids are a little bit younger than both of yours, they just go through these phases where they're sick, and they're still picking up and live for the first time. She had a cold, got over the cold, got tonsillitis, and on top of the tonsillitis, she's been teething, so she's just been miserable, which is then hard for us because we're up all night because she's not sleeping well. There was a 3-hour block the other night where she wouldn't sleep if you put her down. Like as soon as her head touched the bed, she was like, "Nah, I'm up." And then it's another 20 minutes trying to settle her. You know, it's unpredictable if you've got kids. It's unpredictable, especially as I said, if the project is really well scoped out and it's like, this is 6 weeks, I'm going to get it done and I'm going to ship it and it's done, that's fine. But if it drags on, it's hard. Do you go back and say, we need to do what we said we're going to set out to do? Or do you want to throw more money at it so we can add these extra things? And a lot of businesses are like, oh, no, this is part of the project. But it's like, but this is not what we agreed to at the start.
Yeah, that's really tough.
And the scope creep gets hard because you're obviously going to spend more time on it, but they don't want to spend extra money on it because it's like, oh, this should have been in the... Well, it's not something that you thought of at the start when we agreed on what was going to be done. So doing it as a side thing is a lot more difficult to pick up a big project. That said, we joke about it all. I don't know what it's like in Canada or over there in the US, picking up government contracts here. Every 3 months, 4 months, it seems that we see one of these things come out in the news where some company got the contract to do some IT project for the government. It was like $80 million over budget. It delivered like 10% of the scope of the work. It didn't work. The company still got paid. The government's left to look stupid.
Exactly. Like, I want that gig.
And I'm like, can I just get this gig? Like, and they don't even do the job properly. So you don't even have to be competent, but you're getting $110 million to do this 3-month project. Like, I'll take $110 million and retire.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Let's get like a Laravel group together, Michael, that you're just like, okay, I've got a group of like 15 developers and we're going to take this next one on, like this next Australian contract. We've got it primed, ready to go. We each get $10 million and go. We all quit our jobs.
Yeah.
Speaking of this, so my wife was in healthcare. She's an audiologist. And when she started her job, there was this like new kind of like integrated like health record system where if as a patient you saw a dentist or a doctor or an emergency room, physician or anything like that, it would be like part of your record. Like everyone would be able to draw on that same information. Everything's centralized. So obviously this is an incredible feat and achievement to have out. So when it came out, her manager said that they had this like thing, like if there's any bugs or any issues with the software, to record the issues and try and get as much information about it, like a bug. The bug report.
Sure.
1 year, any bug reports.
Oh my gosh.
They weren't going to touch it for a year. Like I don't even understand. Like my jaw dropped, and it required IE6. It required IE6. Yes.
No. Oh my gosh.
She wasn't allowed to update her system because IE6 was a requirement for the software.
Well, they spent all the money on the software. They can't afford to go and upgrade everyone's computers that are already in the field.
But what reliance can you have on IE6? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, just for sure.
Ridiculous.
So, I think this would actually be a good opportunity maybe to talk to some other people who are maybe thinking about making the same jump, right, out to freelance. They're working a full-time job right now. Or maybe they're just getting into this, like maybe they don't have any kids, maybe they're just sort of looking, how do I get started with that? What are some things that you feel like you've learned over the last couple of years that you'd say these are essential things that you need to have in place in order to be successful? It could be things like, here's how you scope a project, or you need to have at least this many contracts in place before you jump out there, or you need to have this much runway and you should have some savings, whatever. Like, what are some things that you kind of worked through before, making this jump back to freelance again, that you said these are some things that you should at least think about before you jump out there?
So I knew that I wasn't going to need that long of a runway, but I had 3 months saved where if I didn't make another dollar, our lifestyle wasn't going to be impacted. So I gave myself 3 months to make a paycheck. That's one thing for sure. Just everyone's math is different. I happen to live in an unbelievably expensive city, so it's a bit different for me. But just make sure you have like the ability to go without a paycheck for as long as you think it's going to take. The other thing for sure, and I think it's probably the reason why I'm so confident in taking on a big project now, is just being able to kind of like just break it down and stop chasing like the dumb stuff. And part of that is like, don't even think about a microservice. Don't think about GraphQL. Don't think about any of this nonsense. Just think about just getting the product working. Because I can tell you for a fact that like every project, and like you guys, I don't know if you guys remember like Adam Wathan and Jonathan Rennick having those podcast episodes about Jonathan Rennick's project, the project he was working on, Roll Call. Do you guys remember those episodes of form validation?
I don't remember that. I feel like I remember it slightly.
Marathon episode about form validation, and this was the product that I came in and started working with John at, like that product. So that product, there wasn't a single thing that we did to optimize it that wasn't like a database thing or something like that, right? Like there's always these really like easy fixes to things. It wasn't like, oh, we need to slap this on and get Kafka going, and we need to get a microservice over here in this region and do this and get a jot with claims, and none of that. Like very simple, just kind of like business solutions, solve the business problems, solve the customer problems, and kind of move forward. So having that kind of like, just not looking at this kind of like the shiny objects and just kind of like keeping in mind what's important really has helped me like kind of like scope out work and do the work that needs to be done. Even think about like how to prioritize a feature. Like you can kind of like even use that kind of mentality to, you know, what gets done first, what's more important, like how to, you know, what comes first, like how that breaks apart, you know, vertical slices, horizontal slices, like however you want to cut those features apart. You get a lot more experience doing that kind of stuff. And I think that really, really helps. But, you know, obviously not everyone's going to have the opportunity to be able to like land a really big project, but just do whatever you can just to get your foot in the door. Don't sell yourself short. Like don't like undervalue yourself is probably the most important thing, because you're just going to end up hating yourself for it. Like make sure that you're getting, you know, make sure you're going to be happy with the money that you're going to get if it ends up being extra hours for you, right? Like that's another thing. And something that I learned from Hemphill is try to do more project pricing rather than hourly.
Yeah, that's huge.
And that cuts both ways, right? Like that could be, you know, you working 20 hours to build something that was expected to take an entire week, and then you get all that money. But it also protects the customer too, because if that customer ends up like, you know, expecting a feature and you said it was going to take a week and it takes you 2 weeks, they're not paying for an extra week of work.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So it does come back, you know, like it kind of comes back and forth. So you end up kind of like being able to, you know, make a good case and argument for that. Those are definitely things I would suggest. Obviously, bargaining and, you know, figuring out that stuff is going to be up to the, you know, your comfort level. Having like some sort of service agreement is also really important. There's a bunch of like really nice, like there's like PandaDoc and HelloSign and all these other companies that you can just, you know, sign up for like a $15 and $20 a month thing and get like, you know, really good, you know, contracts that, you know, you can get you and the customer to sign. Obviously, like you're gonna, you know, like if you're in Canada and the other people are like in Texas, like I don't know how you're gonna go to court over something like that, but just get some, you know, get something in writing, just try and make it a little bit more official, make it seem a bit more official, kind of, I think is also helpful. But yeah, I don't know. Other than that, just do your best work, over deliver, over communicate. You know, under promise, over deliver is probably one of the best ways that you can do it.
Yeah. I had that second point you made around just sticking to what you know and not looking at the shinies and the new technology, I think is important, because academically some people look at programming as, you know, the right way and the right technology and all of that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, if someone's coming to you as a freelancer to build something, the chances are they're not going to look at the code. Chances are they're a small business that doesn't have the expertise to do it. A bigger business that has all of these technologies in it has probably got their own in-house team, which you might be coming in to help. But if you're doing something from scratch, then certainly you want to get it done in the way that you best know to get things done. Don't use client projects as a proving ground or a you know, playground for you to try out some new technology, because it's not going to be a good experience for the client. It's going to take you longer.
That's a really good point.
Than
yeah,
to get it done, because you're learning as you go. And key to it all is that the customer just needs to see that when they click a button in a form in their browser, that it ends up in a table in the admin area for them to review. At the end of the day, that's what marks a successful project for a lot of these things. So I think that was a really good point that you raised.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
And
that was why I was so stagnant right before, like, because I was literally just trying to solve problems all the time, and I wasn't really like learning. I didn't feel like I was like learning as much as I could have because of that.
Yeah. And to your other point around value-based pricing, I know roughly what I charge per hour, but I will figure out how many hours it's going to take, and I will then do that calculation and present that to the client. And I say, this is what I'm going to get done. This is how much it's going to cost. And I'm just fortunate in the clients that I've had, but they're like, yep, let's get it done. And they usually, as most clients, they'll usually come to you and it's like, I need it by this date. And there's not often going to be much wiggle room on that if they're coming to you with something they need done by a date. So you just figure out how long it's going to take and you work to that. And, if it is a short deadline, maybe increase what you're calculating your hourly at to get to that final figure.
You should definitely do that.
So, if you're charging, I don't know, $200 an hour as your regular rate, and you would say this project's going to take me 4 weeks to do. If they come to you they want it in 3 weeks or 2 weeks, it's a last minute thing, increase that rate. They don't know what your hourly is. They just know how much it's going to cost at the end of the day. New clients, I typically split invoicing. They pay a deposit, and then they'll pay a progress, and then they'll pay a final. So, I've had that fear. I've heard from you, Yaz. I've heard from Hemphill as well. Just clients that you do a whole bunch of work for, and then they don't pay. So anyone that's new, then they get stuck with a deposit invoice, and I'm not starting until that's paid. And then the progress invoice comes when I'm like, here, it's done. Now, once they're happy with it, then I send them the next invoice, and then we deploy it to production, and then they send the final invoice. And then worst case scenario, if they don't pay, then I'm only out 20% of the contract, or whatever. Especially if it's big money. If it's less than $1,000, if it's only a small piece of work, okay, it probably didn't take me that long to do, and I'm not too worried about it. But if I'm quoting up there, bigger numbers and bigger pieces of work, then and especially for new clients, if you don't know these people,
that's the key. Yeah, for sure.
It's very important that you get, as you said, an agreement in place. It doesn't really have to be huge. It could just be as a single person contractor. Don't try and make yourself sound bigger than you are, because you're just lying to everyone. You're lying to yourself. You're lying to your customers. Don't pretend like, unless you're farming out the work, charging $300 an hour and then offshoring the work for $100 an hour or whatever. Just get it done. And then I always offer the option to clients. I make them pay for hosting. I give them their own Amazon account, because I don't want to deal with that coming up in my invoices and whatever. I charge them. I say, this is how much hosting is, plus a lot of what I do is using S3 and data transfer. So I say plus whatever the Amazon charges are. There's no markup on that. It's just whatever they are. And then I give them the option of like a monthly retainer for up to X hours of support per month. And if they want extra or per incident, like they get their choice. So if the thing is, if it's something in my code that was broken, then I'll fix it. That was on me.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something that they didn't account for or they didn't test for properly, like they went through, if they sign off on it and say it's broken, then, that's what the retainer's for. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to, so there's a couple of things I want to touch on. I wanted to say first about the retainers, Michael. Actually, maybe I'll swing back to that. I think I'll swing back to that. So one thing that you had talked about, is like, don't get distracted by the new shiny things. And Hemphill has told me this before too. I've heard him say it before. Like, learn as much as you can so you can use as little as you need, right? The idea of like, if you know a lot about all these different technologies, you can pick the correct one for the job and it's going to work really well, right? So instead of trying to use Vuex and whatever and all this stuff, you can use Inertia, right? And so like, it's just kind of like knowing enough about a lot of things, like, you know, be sort of like T-shaped, right? You know enough information about all these technologies to get started with them, but then you have really deep technical knowledge in a couple of those areas, right? So I think that's important because there are a lot of times where you'll be approaching a problem from one angle, and if you would just use this different tool, it's actually going to save you a lot of time and a lot of frustration, right? The other idea is the idea of value pricing and project pricing. So a perfect example, I had a air conditioner go out on like the hottest day of the year. It was a holiday, and I called a dude and I was like, I got to have this thing fixed like today. He's like, I can be there tomorrow morning at like 9. I'm like, great, sounds good. He came out, he took apart my air conditioner and he fixed it in like 15 minutes. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. This is great. And I was like, what was wrong? He's like, oh, this capacitor popped on it. You know, it's an older air conditioner. I was like, can I get the box so like I can, you know, buy that part in case it goes out? He said, no problem. It was a $7 part. He charged me $250. I was like, happy to pay it because I did not care at that point. It did not matter. I didn't care it was a $7 part. I didn't care it took 15 minutes. Didn't care it was a hot. None. Doesn't matter. Like $250. Absolutely happy to pay it. I would have paid him 300, you know, no big deal. And that's the idea of project pricing, right? Of value pricing. If you can look at the project and say, to the client, what would you be happy to pay me to do this? Because it could depend. It could, like, if it's a feature that's totally like throwaway, it's not really a big deal, but like one of their stakeholders asked for it, you know, maybe you can't justify that. But if it's like, this is a critical piece of infrastructure moving forward, we'd be happy to pay you 20 grand to solve this problem. Like if we paid you 20 grand and you could solve it, we would be stoked. Great. Charge them 20 grand. Doesn't matter if it's going to take you 2 days. Doesn't matter, because the value to the client is worth X number of dollars, right? And if you can figure out how to negotiate in a way that makes sense like that, you end up with a happy client, and you're happy too because you get a lot of money for it, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, it does cut both ways for sure. But you're not ripping somebody off if they're happy to pay you to do it, right? You don't have to feel bad about it. It's not like you're, you know, it's like you have the skill set and the knowledge that they don't have to solve the problem. Doesn't matter how much time it takes. Doesn't matter. Yeah. So that's one way to sort of like overcome the guilt maybe of like getting around like this value pricing idea. It's not, you're not ripping anybody off. That's not the case. The last thing I was going to say, is like, you know, Michael, you had talked about retainers. And when I've talked to Wilbur Powery about some of this stuff too, like he does that, right? Like he has retainers with different clients where they'll pay him regardless of if they use him or not. Do you ever do that to sort of help de-risk some of your time? So like if you do have a big project that, or if you're not able to land a big project, you at least sort of have this base money that you come into with every month that you say like, I have X number of dollars that I know that it's going to, you know, pay for my bills, right? Regardless. And then I have these other projects I'm hoping to land. Is that something you do?
There's one project that I'm going to be working on in a couple of weeks, and that's kind of the way that I'm structuring it. It's going to be like based on a set amount of hours a week, and you know, with room to go up to 40 hours, because I don't want to like schedule myself 100%. Sure. But I do know that there's going to be weeks that are going to do that. So that, in a sense, that's kind of like the retainer in a way. So like I may work less than 30 hours, I may work more than 30 hours, but I'll always get paid 30 hours, for example. Nice, yeah. And then the other one was kind of similar to the arrangement that Michael was mentioning. I had an e-commerce client I built. For whatever reason, like they just could not see themselves in any off the shelf stores because of so many weird reasons. So I had to build them like a custom store. They actually, no joke. If I'm not mistaken, he was worried about using Google Mail for an email account because he thought Google would know who his customers are. This is the type of like kind of like concerns. Yeah. So they didn't want to have like Shopify know who their customers are, because Shopify would then, I don't know what they would do. But I ended up having to put them on like a 10-hour a month retainer that was basically just like an SOS thing for, you know, like if anything happened to the stores, if anything went down, or, you know, like if something happened to the server. So that was kind of more of a maintenance thing, but it was a retainer because there was months where I didn't do anything. there was months where I probably worked like 20 hours. So
that's awesome.
It evens
I mean,
out over the course of a year.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I don't see like that. I don't even know. So I'm totally cool with value pricing. I've done it before. The retainer thing is something I have no idea how to sell to a client. I don't know. I don't know how you convince them to be like, listen, here's the deal. I'm going to give you up to 30 hours a week for this price if you need it. Now, if you don't need it, doesn't matter. You're still going to pay me. Like, I don't know how you sell somebody on that. I just don't. I've never been able to like get somebody to be like, oh, you know what? That sounds like a great idea. Let's do that.
I mean, with my client, I kind of use it that if there was 10 hours one month that I didn't use, that I could use them the next month because I was getting paid for them. But, that does kind of put you at risk of like having 200 hours banked.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're not working
for a month. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. For sure.
But I don't think that you want to like without sounding slimy, but I don't think you want to position it as like, I may work, I may not work. Just say, like I will be available for you, for this amount of time, for this amount of money every month. Is the way that I would position it. That
sounds like a good way to say it. Yeah, for sure. You don't ever want to like sell it to somebody as like, I may work, I may not work. Like,
yeah.
Probably not the verbiage you'd want to use.
Would you ever get to the point if they are banking those hours that you would just cut them off, like, and de-risk both yourself and the client, such that they're not paying you for work that they clearly don't need you to do? And that you're not banking all this time, that, as I said, you might get railroaded where suddenly you've got 100 hours worth of work to do in a month and you've got other clients on the go. Would you, cut them off and then say, if we need to pick this up again in future, then we can discuss it then?
I mean, with them in particular, like they were the only ones that I was in that situation with. I basically would on a quiet month, I would try and, do a bunch of the maintenance stuff that I couldn't, that they wanted, like some of the bigger things. So I always tried to make sure that I was burning those hours, keeping it down. But I think that you would definitely have to wade into that one very cautiously. These guys, I've been working with them for 5 years. I knew what to expect. I knew the cadence of things that I would have to do with them. I knew what the goals and objectives were in terms of what they were doing. So I didn't really feel like I was going to get railroaded or blindsided by stuff. And I did have a good enough relationship where I could, just say, okay, I'm going to do that email thing that you want to do. So I'm going to build all those templates this month and, use last month's hours. And they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because to them, it's not going to make a difference. Right.
I'm always doing sort of, ancillary tasks, dependent on runs. It spits out its pull requests. I go and look, review, make sure the tests continue to pass, ship those things. That's once a week. Even that, it takes half an hour. That's something that's done, and that's setting yourself up for success in the future, keeping things up to date rather than, and Laravel's release cadence has slowed down a bit now, where it's annually instead of every 6 months. So you don't want to have 12 months worth of features and updates and things like that. Laravel Shift makes it easy, sure, but keeping on top of that as and when it happens so that you can just pick up, from this is the current version of Laravel the next time you work on it, if it gets that way. So there's always something that can be done, I guess.
Yeah, always. There's always somewhere.
All right, guys. Well, hey, listen, go ahead. Yeah, so I was going to say we're getting close to an hour here, so go ahead.
The one thing I want to mention though is that like when you were talking about like the value pricing and worried about like charging and stuff, the way that I think that you need to frame it in your head is that your accumulated experience as a developer, as somebody that's working in the position that you're working, where you're leading a team, you've successfully like scoped and broken down features and got them deployed in production and maintained them and all that other stuff. All of that stuff, when you bring that into another customer, another client, that's kind of like what you're talking about with the air conditioning guy that, was able to fix it in 15 minutes because he's been doing it, he can do it in his sleep, right? Whereas someone new would probably charge like a third. You got to remember those years of experience are going to be, things that you're going to have in your head that you're going to be able to like work through a problem differently and better than somebody that hasn't had that experience.
Yeah, sure.
So there's, it's always the same case, right? When you're getting, going for a job, right? Like your salary is going to be negotiated on your experience for that reason.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
Tradie is always a good one. When you call a plumber or you call a gas fitter or you call a Sparky, whoever you're calling out, whenever you call these people, you don't. Yeah, you might get 3 quotes or 4 quotes or whatever, but you're not going to haggle with the one. You know, you're just going to say, yep, that's how much it costs. It's you know, and you don't ask, and for us as IT contractors, you know, it's some people will just haggle. It's like, you know, it's not worth it. I said, well, I'm not gonna try and bend your arm. Like, if you don't want to pay it, go and pay someone a third of the price, and I'll see you in 4 months when you need it fixed properly. So, you know, and that's the same thing with a tradie. You could get the cheapest tradie, and you always run the risk of having to get it fixed again properly after more damage is done. You know, they miswire something, suddenly you've got an electrical fault, now you got to get someone back, and then you charge them more. So,
and my dad's advice way back was, if you don't want to be getting paid $5 to paint someone's house, don't be the guy that paints people's houses for $5. Like, just don't do it, right? If your rate is this is what you want to get, that's what you want to charge, just charge that. Don't go and, you know, take 30% of it or 10% of it just to kind of get the job.
There's always going to be a Jake out there with a corporate credit card flapping around saying, we'll pay 25 grand for 2 days work.
There you go. We
got to clean up Wilbur's mess somehow, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wilbur Powery's mess, by the way, not Wilbur the group, not Wilbur company. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah,
Wilbur Powery, Costa Rica.
Wilbur. Yeah. Oh man. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, I was going to say, I love how Australians have all these cute names for people. Tradies and a Sparky, which I'm guessing is an electrician. And yeah, a Sparky. Yeah. So funny.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Yaz, thanks so much for coming on, man. It's been super insightful to talk to you about some of this stuff. I've actually had some of these questions for a while. And as soon as I saw you say like, hey, I'm launching out there freelance, I'm like, we got to talk about some of this stuff. I know that you've got a ton of experience and a ton of time, you know, behind you working on all these things. So thanks for coming on today, sharing some of your knowledge, and hopefully as you go forward on this path, lots of new clients, lots of new work, and lots of amazing things ahead for you, man. Best of luck.
Awesome. Hey, did you guys ever get chocolate from Andres at Laracon?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Man, you should see the chocolate that he gave Eric Barnes.
Is it?
Like, I'm guessing it was massive.
Okay.
Was it bigger than Eric?
Okay.
Not only was it bigger, it was like, I think I got like one of those like plastic bags that had like the 4 like chocolate covered coffee beans in it.
Nice.
And then I saw Eric with this like bag, and I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "I don't know. Andres gave it to me." I'm like, yeah. I was just curious because I want to trade notes, because I know that you guys also know Andres and would have been at the conference when he was giving out that chocolate. So
yeah, that's funny. I don't remember getting any, but I'm gonna have to message him now and be like, "Hey, dude, where's my chocolate?" He'll probably, you know, he's like one of those dudes who told me like, "Oh my gosh, man, I'm so sorry. I'll ship it to you tomorrow." He probably would.
Oh, and ask him to sing Moana for you in Spanish.
Okay. All right. Excellent. I will do so.
And if he doesn't, I will send you the Telegram recording that he sent me.
Well, I don't know if you heard this. Michael, how many episodes ago was it where he actually sang a Laravel, or it was on Laravel News. He sang a song about packages for us. Like Laravel packages.
I'm so sorry.
He was at the end of the show. It was hilarious.
It
was really good.
I'm really sorry.
You know, Andres is going to record the song, and then he sent it to us like 20 minutes later. We used it in the next episode. So
unbelievable. I apologize for him. I'm really sorry.
All right, man. Well, this was episode 98 of the North Meets Southwood podcast. If you'd like to find show notes for this episode, you can find them at northmeetsouth.audio/98. If you liked the show, please feel free to rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be amazing. You can find Yaz at Ninja Parade on Twitter, and Michael and myself at our normal spots. Michael Derrida at Jacob Bennett. Yaz, thanks again for coming on the show, man. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. Till next time, folks. We'll see you later.
Peace.